In this lesson, I'll demonstrate how to find and install the tools that you'll need to follow along in this series of lessons. I could probably save you 10, 15, 20 minutes if you already have Visual Studio 2013 Professional, Premium, or Ultimate already installed, or if you have Visual Studio 2013 Express for Web installed, or if you have any version after 2013 installed, then you can probably safely skip the remainder of this video. Just go ahead to the next lesson where we build our first web application. Just make sure that you have applied all the updates that are specific to either Visual Studio or C# or ASP.NET. You can find those updates in the notification area. The notification area is a little flag in the upper right hand corner of Visual Studio. I'll demonstrate that here at the very end of this lesson. And you click on that little flag and it opens up a window on the right hand side called notifications. And those notifications are typically things that you can install or update. So again, anything that's pertinent to Visual Studio itself or C# or ASP.NET are things you definitely want to install. There are other options to usually a new version of NuGet. Don't worry about that. You can if you want to. Entity Framework, Azure, things of that nature. You don't really need those, but go ahead and update them. I always update stuff. I'm kind of a clean freak when it comes to updates. But at any rate, you're free to move along. The remainder of this lesson is for you if you don't already have some version of Visual Studio installed and you'd like a little help finding a free version of Visual Studio and you need a little help, a little guidance through that process. I'd be happy to help you out. All right, so as I said a moment ago to those other folks who've already left, you can use any edition of Visual Studio. That includes Professional, Premium, and Ultimate, and those are paid versions, and they're pretty expensive in some cases. They're intended for professional developers who work in large enterprises, and frankly, they have a lot of features that you simply won't need as an absolute beginner. I mean, I don't even need most of the features that they offer in the new, in each new version of Visual Studio or each larger edition. So the great news is that you don't have to spend any money to get started in building web applications and learning C#. And Microsoft, about 10 years ago, they released the Express editions, which are for people like you who are just wanting to learn how to build on the Microsoft platform from the very beginning, or for hobbyists. And I think that was a great move by Microsoft to introduce developers into the fold. And so kudos to Microsoft for offering that. And so, like I said a moment ago, there are differences. There are editions like Professional, Premium, Ultimate, and Express. But there's also versions, and versions typically kind of correspond to the year in which they were released. And each new version has more features, an updated user interface, changes to the menu options and things of that nature. They're usually additive in nature. They usually just add more features on. So if you're using 2013 or 2015 or beyond and you watch this series of lessons, you should still be able to follow along just fine. And if there are any changes that would break what I say in this series of lessons, I'll definitely come back and re-record them as necessary. All right, so before we actually download and get started with Visual Studio, I would highly recommend that you apply all the updates to your operating system first. And as you can see here, I'm using a fresh install of Windows 8.1, and so if you're using Windows 8.1, there is a way to kind of force the issue to make Windows update. If you go to the lower right hand corner or upper right hand corner and pull out the charm bar and you click on the settings charm and you go to the change PC settings menu option on the settings menu, you'll see this PC settings menu, and you want to go to near the bottom, update and recovery, and the very first option is Windows Update. You'll click on the check now button, and I just ran this like a minute ago, so I know there's no new updates, but if you were to click on check now, it's either going to tell you there are no updates, or it'll say there are updates but we'll automatically install them for you. But you can click, there's usually a little hyperlink. There were updates found, hyperlink, and we will install them over the course of the next 3 days. But you don't want to install them over the course of the next 3 days. You want to install them now. So you'll click the link. It'll show you all the updates that need to be applied. Go ahead and force the issue and install those before you get started with Visual Studio. I only say this because in a previous attempt at this video, I didn't apply the updates, and as I was recording it, Visual Studio got stuck, and I think the reason was because I had updates that needed to be applied to, and there was just a conflict. And so get that out of the way, and you don't have to ever worry about it. All right, so now what we want to do is open up Internet Explorer, and we want to navigate to Microsoft.com/Express, which is a shortcut that will always take you to the most current version of the Express editions of Visual Studio. And the biggest difference between the paid versions of Visual Studio and the Express versions of Visual Studio, or editions of Visual Studio, is that they break up the Express editions by the type of application that you'll want to build. So, for example, here they have Express 2013 for web, for building ASP.NET web applications like we'll be doing in this series. We'll come back to this one in just a moment. There's also Express 2013 for Windows, and that's for building these modern style apps in Windows 8, 8.1, and beyond that can be sold in the Windows Store. If you scroll down a little bit, there's an Express 2013 for Windows Desktop, and this sometimes confuses people. Express 2013 for Windows Desktop allows you to create applications that can be executed here on the Windows desktop. All right, so yes, it's still Windows. It's just some of them run in little windowed areas, like on the desktop, and then some are full screen with the modern user interface that are sold in the store. So that's the differentiation between the two. We're not going to be using either of those in this series of lessons. However, we do have a whole track that's almost identical to this track, this web development track, and I'll be building that out later this year. Maybe it's available by the time you're watching this, in case you want to solely focus on being a Windows developer and not a web developer, okay, on the Microsoft platform. So moving on, there's also a Team Foundation Server 2013 Express for teams that want to work together, and so on. But we're going to go all the way back up to the top, Express 2013 for web, and click the download link. And this will take us to a page that will give us the option to choose a different language, and then it'll give us installation options. There are two. The first one, this first one here on the top, is a Bootstrap application. It's tiny. You download it, you run it, and then after you kind of agree to the terms of service and things of that nature, it will grab everything it needs from across the interwebs and down to your local computer and then install them there. The difference is between this and the one below it is that you would download this entire ISO file, and an ISO file is what you use to burn a physical DVD that you can put in your machine and then run the installation. And that's helpful if you're going to install it on a bunch of machines. You only have to download the bits one time, put them on disk, and then install from there. We're not going to do that. Let's go ahead and click the Install Now button here for the Bootstrap application. Now, what I'd like to say is that Microsoft is a marketing company first and a software company second. And so what you probably saw whenever you clicked on this link here is you probably saw this page where you have to actually log in first to your Microsoft account before downloading Visual Studio. So you can see it already has my credentials. I've done this a bunch of times. If you don't already have a Microsoft account, then you'll need to sign up for one. There's the link right there near the bottom of that page. Microsoft likes to know who's using what. Not necessarily you specifically, but in aggregate. How many downloads do they have for a given tool, and they just want to keep track of things so that they know where to invest their dollars going forward. You'll have to sign in one more time with Visual Studio. I'll show that a little bit later, obviously, but let's go ahead and just sign in. Now you'll see this screen where you can either download the Express Edition or Ultimate. You might be tempted to download Ultimate, right? But trust me, you don't need those tools, and I think it's only a timed trial version, so I'd recommend just sticking with Express 2013 for web. It's all you need. You don't need more clutter on your computer now. When you become a professional, when your company buys you a license for Ultimate 2013 for like $5,000, then you can definitely dig in and learn about those extra features. All right, so we'll click the download the Express 2013 link, and now I can either run or save that little Bootstrap. I'm going to go ahead and just click run, and I'm going to go ahead and close down Internet Explorer for now. Yeah, close it all. All right, so the Bootstrap application pops up. It's going to ask where you want to install it. I typically leave it at the defaults, but you can change it if you don't have a lot of room on your primary drive. You'll have to agree to the license terms and the privacy policy. And then here's an option to join the Visual Studio Experience Improvement Program. Again, this is a way for them to collect telemetry about your use of Visual Studio in aggregate so that they know where to invest dollars going forward, who's using what features, and where should we invest our money. All right, so let's go ahead and click the install link. User account control pops up, says, are you sure you want to install something this important on your computer? Yes. All right. So let's go ahead and let that run for a few minutes. I have a few other things I want to tell you, and then we'll pause the video and wait for it to finish downloading and installing. But one of the things that I think it's important to get out of the way right up front is that it'll seem to you at first that Visual Studio and C# and ASP.NET are all kind of the same thing. They're all kind of tied together somehow. But that's not necessarily the case. In fact, you can create C# applications or ASP.NET applications without Visual Studio at all. I've done it a couple times. It is not fun, let me tell you. However, it can be done. So as you go through this series, you're going to see that Visual Studio is really just a shell that you load things into, okay? And so there will be specific updates to technologies like C# or the .NET framework or ASP.NET. These things may mean nothing to you, but you're essentially just uploading components that fit into this overall arching shell. And let me just bring this up as well. I talked about problems during install of Visual Studio. I've only encountered that once, and it happened to be while it was on camera. And I've done this dozens of times without any problems, but occasionally I read that people have problems installing Visual Studio. They get error messages and things of that nature. Now, honestly, I can't help you there. I haven't seen every single problem that's ever popped up, but I know where you can go to get some help. Let's take a look. Actually, I have a hyperlink over here that I've saved, but you can get to this hyperlink by going to msdn.microsoft.com/forums. Now, this particular hyperlink is already kind of filtered down the categories to just those that are pertinent to installation problems during Visual Studio. The way I did this was I went to the to view. Actually, let me click the clear button here to deselect the filtered forums, and now I'm going to click the View All link next to the word Forums up there, and I'm going to go Visual Studio Development, and then scroll down to Setup and Installation. And so this will refine the questions and the answers that have that other people have had while trying to install Visual Studio. Now let me just, before we get into this and talk about how to submit a question correctly to these forums, the first thing you should really do is reboot your computer. I have found that in most cases, a simple reboot and try again fixes most problems, all right? If that doesn't fix the problem, you should probably search online, use Google. I know you're supposed to use Bing as a Microsoft guy, but Google just seems to have better results for me personally. I don't know. Don't get mad at me, okay? But at any rate, search online. Use the exact error message. In fact, use double quotes around the message that you see on screen. If they give you an error code, search for that. It'll probably lead you to the MSDN forums. If not, it might lead you to Stack Exchange. Either of those will potentially help you. But let's suppose for a moment that you find a problem that nobody else has ever encountered in the history of Visual Studio, which is highly unlikely, but none of the solutions helped you. What can you do? Well, you go here to the MSDN forums, and you'll want to ask a question. When you click on that button, you can start to compose your question. Now, let me tell you this. There are correct ways to ask a question, and there are incorrect ways. The right way to do it is to, first of all, make sure that you include the entire error message, including any numerical codes that you don't understand that maybe will trigger something in Microsoft's knowledge bases. include the entire error message, include which operating system that you're currently using and trying to install it on. So in my case, it would be Windows 8.1. I think I've already applied a service pack and things of that nature, anything that might help people diagnose the problem. You'll want to actually list everything you've tried so far. If you don't take that step, then people will start throwing out suggestions that you've already tried. This is where the is your computer running? That sort of thing. Why do people ask that first? Because, well, frankly, it's what fixes most problems for most people. But hopefully you're a little bit beyond that. And then finally, what I want to say is you want to always say please and thank you whenever somebody's trying to help you out. Even if they give you a smart aleck answer, whatever the case might be the bigger person. The fact of the matter is that these forums, for the most part, are monitored by Microsoft employees. But there are also these people in the community who are called Microsoft Most Valuable Professionals. And they dedicate their time, their free time, to helping people like you and me solve our problems. And Microsoft rewards them and acknowledges them with this award. And so they're doing it from their own free will. They're doing it because they're good people and they want to help others. And so always be kind, say please and thank you. It goes a long way to being a good citizen in the software development community. All right. So let's go ahead and get rid of Internet Explorer again. Yes, leave this page. All right. So you can see we've acquired the assets. It usually takes 20-30 minutes depending on the speed of your internet connection. I happen to have a pretty fast internet connection, so it seems to be coming down pretty fast. But I'm going to pause the video right here and we'll pick it back up when Visual Studio has finished installing. We're not done after that. We'll have another thing to say. Just stick with me here. We're pausing now. Okay, so after a few moments, it looks like it's complete. Let's go ahead and click the launch button. And this is the second time that you'll be asked to log in. This time's a little bit different. What they want to do is sync up settings from other installs of Visual Studio that you've been signed into. So you'll see that manifested here in just a moment. It'll bring down fonts and colors and window placement and things of that nature from other sessions that I've signed into with Visual Studio. Okay, and so after a moment, you can see Visual Studio opens up. It displays a start page, which has a couple of cool features to it. The largest part there in the middle are news-related items or links into MSDN, which stands for the Microsoft Developer Network, articles and videos and things of that nature that can help you learn more about programming in Visual Studio and new updates and things of that nature. Up here on the left-hand side is a nice convenient way to create a new project, open an existing project, or you'll see this list of recent projects begin to populate as we add new projects over the coming lessons. One thing I wanted to show you, though, with regards to updating Visual Studio before we get too far, if you find this little flag over here in kind of the upper right-hand corner, it's a number of notifications that have been identified. I'm going to click that. It opens up the notifications window, and you can see that there's a number of updates. The one that really is interesting to me is this Visual Studio 2013 Update 2, because it's updating Visual Studio, but anything that updates C# as well, ASP.NET, and I think that's probably about it. Those three, definitely want to update those. The others are optional. I'm going to go ahead and click this item in the notification bar. It will bring up this extensions and updates dialog. The second item is to apply that update 2 to Visual Studio 2013. I'll click the update button. Many times it will ask us to, let's go ahead and run that from the downloads. It'll ask us to close down Visual Studio so that it can apply the updates and not have to restart the computer. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to shut that down. I'm going to close Visual Studio down. I'll close down this downloads dialog as well. And now I'll click retry. And I'll agree to the new license, terms, privacy policy, and all of that good stuff. I'll click install. Agree to UAC again, and here we are. And this is where I'm going to leave you. Off camera, I'm going to go ahead and apply all the updates. There was an option to download all of the content of MSDN offline. You don't need to do that. That's just going to take a lot of hard drive space. You can always search online on MSDN for the most recent content, and I would recommend that. Okay, so after this finishes updating, I'll see you in the next lesson where we're going to build our very first web application using C#. We'll see you there. Thank you.